Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The Prime Minister is facing another rebellion tonight over her Brexit plans, just 24 hours after the last one. This time from Tory MPs who want to stay in the European Union. They've tabled an amendment to the trade bill, which would force the UK to join a customs union with the EU if the government is unable to reach an agreement on frictionless trade by January of next year. The amendment has the backing of Labour. It follows last night's concession to pro-Brexit Tory MPs over the customs bill. And it's another challenge to the Prime Minister's authority, and the result of the vote is thought to be imminent. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, John Pienaar.
What does a cabinet in crisis look like? Come on in and take a look. Crisis? What crisis? Forget Brexit for a moment. Theresa May was keen to talk up some good news.
While the cameras are in, I can report that the unemployment and employment figures show that employment has hit a new record.
A slightly awkward silence. Brexit's in deep trouble. Ministers like the new Brexit secretary just see angry Brexiteers and former Remainers barring his path or trying to.
Secretary Dr. Greg Clark.
Today, the business secretary was appealing to Labour to resist backing every Tory rebellion.
What we need from the opposition is for them to recognise the national interest in having a good deal. Almost everyone in this country wants to see a good deal negotiated between Britain and the European Union, rather than edging for difference.
The government's planned a route to Brexit, but it's hard going. Today, the word's gone out from ministers. Give compromise a chance. Allow the Brexit plan to move on. So much persuading to do, so little time. Local Tory chairmen have been called into number 10 too. Some are far from happy.
Instead of the leaders leading, they asked the public for their views. And when the public gave their views, it's been ignored.
Who else can cause trouble for Mrs May today? Well, the Tory former Remainers want the government to stay in a European customs union if no other plans agreed by next January, even though the Prime Minister's always said Britain must leave. In the last few moments, the dissident Tories are refusing to back down.
Let's do this the other way round. I'll make you a generous offer. Why don't you accept new clause 18 today, and then amend it in the laws.
And with Labour voting with those Tories, the government could be facing another defeat within the hour. Another hole blown in the Brexit plan Theresa May drove through the cabinet less than a fortnight ago. Win or lose, and defeat seems a real possibility just now. It's hard to see Theresa May driving any plan through Parliament, finding any way to break the Brexit deadlock. Even a small breathing space would be welcome. Brexit's been a work in progress for months, but now there's more trouble on the Brexit worksite than ever, and time is running out fast.
John Pienaar reporting there. Well, let's go back to our top story, the debate taking place in the House of Commons on the Brexit trade bill. John Pienaar, the vote is expected imminently. What more can you tell us?
Well, Fiona, as we speak, this latest confrontation between ministers and former Remainer dissidents on their own side, it's playing out on the floor of the Commons. Those Remainer dissidents look to have refused an invitation to draw back from this confrontation, so a close result and possibly a damaging defeat is beckoning. We will see and know in the course of the next hour or so. A defeat, Fiona, would clearly be a painful blow to the Prime Minister and her Brexit plan. But either way, the government looks like a government under siege. And a reckoning is beginning to loom in the autumn, which could call the very future of Brexit, even the future of the Prime Minister, into question. So much could happen should this plan go the way that some believe it might, which is altogether against all of the government's plans and wishes. And meanwhile, some Remainers and others nurse the hope that we could yet see the idea of a fresh referendum become a live option. So what might relieve the pressure on the government? Well, one senior Tory close to the Prime Minister was saying to me that one hope, maybe the best hope, was that Brussels, the negotiators in Brussels, could offer something of a lifeline, could offer a concession, which would at least allow talks to be kick-started there and make the Prime Minister's compromise option look like a viable option, something worth pursuing. That may be a tenuous hope as things stand, but it's one of the straws that Conservatives loyal to Mrs May are clinging to. Downing Street will say they are pursuing a painstaking, patient strategy, but they look as much or more like a mouse in a maze without an exit, and time is running out, Fiona, to effect any kind of escape.
Well, we should see the result later in the Commons this evening. John Pienaar, thank you very much.
Well, the government has just won a narrow victory in the House of Commons, defeating an attempt by pro-Remain Conservative MPs to force the government to stick closely to the EU for trade in goods after Brexit. The amendment to the trade bill was the latest skirmish in these bitter Brexit wars that are being fought across Conservative benches, and some now fear that the splits mean the Commons will struggle to find a majority to support any Brexit policy that Theresa May brings forward. Are we then heading quickly now towards a no-deal scenario? Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, is in Central Lobby. Gary.
A lot of people think exactly that, and it's because of votes like tonight that they are thinking that. It was an extraordinary atmosphere in the House of Commons. There was hairdryer treatment, as it's called, dealt out by the whips. People were being brought into the Prime Minister's office. They were being told, the pro-Remain rebels, that what they were about to do was trigger a no-confidence vote in the Prime Minister. Brexit MPs, it was being said, pro-Brexit MPs would put in those letters any minute and it would all happen immediately. The threats were very, very aggressive. Some of the whipping, and we've seen a bit of it as you do under a minority government, really was at the sharp end. But in the end, the government got through, and they got through with the help of 4 MPs who were elected as Labour MPs. 3 of them still are, one of them's currently an independent. What it means, amongst many other things, is that the government is probably going to have to go fishing amongst a different group of MPs, not pro-Brexit Labour MPs, but maybe pro-Remain Labour MPs, if it's to get anything like a deal through the House of Commons, by no means a done deal. By the way, just to add to the complications, this particular bit of business then goes to the House of Lords, and they could ping back an amendment exactly like the one that was defeated just now. Another torrid day for Theresa May.
Changed personnel again at today's cabinet, but whips spent the afternoon warning potential pro-Remain rebels that the boss herself might be challenged if they defeated the government. Pro-Brexit MPs were, they said, ready to move a vote of no confidence in Theresa May if tonight's vote was lost. The rebels, though, weren't budging.
They are so terrified of the Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph and the European Research Group, they're now applying a whip to try to defeat it. And I really hope that they go away for the summer, have a good rest, perhaps lie in a quiet, dark room at some stage, and come back and tell us how exactly they do intend to negotiate these serious matters for the future of our country.
We must have that freedom to have our own international trade policy, our own agreements with countries other than the EU, and our ability to settle our own laws and spend our own money. The British public would expect no less of this Parliament, and they will not accept higgling as their decision to leave the EU.
Those sorts of voices at either end of the party look to some like they're closing off the chances of any deal getting through the Commons. Some have set up a centrist group of Tory MPs, hoping against hope they can build support for Theresa May's Chequers deal.
The Chequers deal, as you look at it now, looks dead. Doesn't look like it would get through the Commons, does it? That's what you're trying to correct.
Well, I think this is, your analysis is, probably depressingly accurate. This whole thing is now being so polarised, it's almost impossible to see which way the PM can go, because whichever way is blocked by one interest group or another.
The government forces, Tory MPs plus the DUP, include around 80 or so MPs who are on the pro-Brexit ERG list. And last night, 14 pro-Remain MPs who've proved ready to vote against the government. Opposition forces include, inside Labour's tent, something around 75 pro-Remain MPs who've already got form as rebels supporting closer EU ties. 4 pro-Leave MPs who last night saved the government's skin. Put something like the Chequers deal in front of them, and the government could lose quite badly. Put the Brexiteers' preferred Canada-style free trade agreement in front of them, and the government loses again, maybe more narrowly.
I think there is a solid majority of good opinion in the Labour Party and a solid majority of good opinion in the Tory Party, which eventually will be able to coalesce around a deal, I hope.
It'll be a bit like a sort of national government.
I think it'll be a bit like a national government. And I must say, if I had my way, we would have a national government to deal with this. I think it is a problem. It's a national problem. It is the most serious problem this country has faced since the war.
And the Conservative Party alone is not in a state at the moment to hold together to do it.
I think it's going to be very difficult, and we, you know, as always in these big things, there are people who are courageous enough to step over lines to do it.
Do you really think that will happen?
I think it might, yeah.
This year, before the year's out?
Before the year is out.
Tory association bosses have been pouring into Number 10 today. Downing Street's been trying to sell the Brexit deal to them, having been warned of a grassroots uprising.
More work has to be done to get the party behind her and to get the general public behind her, I think.
Some more hostile voices are expected to join a conference call the Prime Minister was due to be holding right now.
Well, a little earlier I caught up with the former Brexit Secretary, David Davis, who surrendered his seat at the Cabinet table just over a week ago, and I started by asking him if Brussels engages with the Chequers plan, how much, realistically, room for manoeuvre does Theresa May have?
The simple truth is that if there is another big demand, I think Parliament will start demanding that we start again, that we do something different. I don't think another demand is deliverable in the House of Commons.
You don't think the Prime Minister's got any wriggle room at all in terms of moving closer to Europe, as people expect is the plan behind the Chequers deal?
Tiny details, but no more than that. I mean, you know, there's always the tiniest thing, but big movements, no.
If Europe it does engage with the Chequers deal, and the Prime Minister engages with that, and there are talks about potentially moving a bit closer to some of the EU institutions than the Chequers deal allows for, you're saying at that point there is an uprising?
I think at that point Parliament, I wouldn't put it in those dramatic terms, I think at that point the majority starts to slip away, because when we come to October, I have no doubt that the Labour Party will vote against whatever's brought in front of the House. They've written a set of conditions which is designed to fail any deal. That's what it's about. It's not about sensible conditions. So the Prime Minister is going to need to take virtually the entire Tory party with her.
Now, there's the problem, because the entire Tory party is not a coherent group at all anymore. It's fractured.
I said virtually. Yes, that's right.
But even virtually, you can't afford to lose many people in that no-deal vote, can you? People are struggling to understand, given the numbers in the House of Commons, how any deal gets through this House of Commons.
Well, you have to do the numbers in detail, but you've got a little bit of slack, but not very much.
So what you're saying is that the Prime Minister mustn't move on this. This is not a negotiating position, Chequers. She's got to simply put it on the table. Europe's got to either pick the whole thing up and sign it.
That's pretty much her words the other day.
Well, it's not how most people have interpreted her approach to the Chequers deal. She might have felt she had to say something when she was cornered by a few brutes like you at an awkward moment.
I don't consider myself a brute.
We know that this is an opening negotiating position, and they've tried to give them. They hope to get engagement from Brussels. You're saying you go one step off the reservation of this pretty shoddy deal, and you're in trouble with your party, serious trouble.
It's pretty close to the limit. That's what I'd say.
Isn't the truth that you feel a certain, even now, residual loyalty to Theresa May? You don't want to plunge the knife in, but as lots of people around you, people who've been very close to you, are saying, she is not the person for the next part of this journey if Chequers is rejected.
Well, I don't agree with that. I can't speak for other people on this. I mean, I have a very simple view. She's a good Prime Minister with a formidably difficult job. That's the problem, and she's trying to find a way through. I don't agree with the way she's chosen, but it doesn't mean that's sort of terminal. It means we're going to have to find another way.
It's one of the biggest strategic choices this country could possibly make. You're saying she's called it completely wrong, an absolute howler, and yet you're trying to convince me you want her to stay Prime Minister.
Those are your words, not my words.
I'm paraphrasing, but I'm about
right. Actually, well, no. If you want to paraphrase one of the sentences in my letter to her, which said, it's a complex judgment. You might be wrong, right, and I might be wrong.
No deal is, when you look at the complexion of this Parliament, a very plausible outcome?
It's a possible outcome, certainly.
It's better than Chequers.
Well, the difficulty, what you call no deal, is it depends what it is. There's a bare bones deal, World Trade Organization plus some other elements, which is actually the most likely outcome under those circumstances. I would certainly think it competes with Chequers, certainly.
And it brings a lot of economic harm with it.
No, I mean one of the
there'll be a hit.
There'll be a hit. Let's. I mean, if you want to go down the route, that route, then it's worth actually looking at it properly. I'll say there will be temporary turbulence, an issue at the border, as the French cause a difficulty. You know, there will be issues elsewhere which we have to deal with.
And those have knock-ons, don't they? Food on the shelves.
No. I mean, I've done all that planning. No, I mean there was a lot of really bogus, really scarce.
It was coming from the supermarket, some of it.
Well, it was rubbish. It was.
What do they know? They just run supermarkets.
No. It was rubbish. I mean, the presumption that you've only got one source of fresh food, one source of this. There were stories about being shortages of medicines. Well, we've been through all that planning in great detail. We have this issue to deal with every winter in NHS.
Vote Leave. What view do you take of how they appear to have managed their affairs?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I turned up on Vote Leave platforms. I had nothing to do with the management of it, so I have really no idea what the truth of this matter is, and how well it's been investigated, and what the outcome is. What's more, it looks like it's going to go to the police, so it would be very wrong for me to comment on it.
David Davis talking to Gary Gibbon earlier. Well, joining me now live from Central Lobby is the Conservative Remain supporting MP Antoinette Sandbach. And what we seem to be taking away tonight is that when it comes to the crunch, Jacob Rees-Mogg and his Brexiteers can defeat the government, but you and the Remainers can't.
No, I don't agree with that at all. We won a very important amendment on the European Medicines Agency this evening, which is vital for my constituency, where I have a lot of people who work for example, AstraZeneca. The vote on the customs, staying in a customs union after the 21st of January, if there is no deal, was an attempt to put a backstop in tonight. I understand that a large number of members of the Conservative Party don't want to tie or would seek not to tie the Prime Minister's hands at this stage. But I suspect if we get to the 21st of January and there is no deal, a large number of people in the House of Commons will not support a no-deal outcome, which would be catastrophic for jobs in my constituency and in the North West. And the independent government analysis shows that.
Oh, you're surely not going to wait that long until the end of January before you make your move to protect the economy as you see it from a cliff-edge Brexit?
Well, we already have that process in the EU withdrawal bill, and there's a set lines of when certain matters are going to be debated, and the 21st of January is one of those. The Prime Minister has been very clear that she wants the deal achieved and outlined by October, and I'm very keen. I support the Chequers agreement. The amendment that was framed today was actually framed to support the Chequers agreement. And I'm very clear that if she comes back with a good deal in October, I will be supporting that.
It doesn't look tonight like there is any majority in the House of Commons for any kind of deal over Brexit, as long as Labour is still opposing.
Well, what it did show is that that this amendment was defeated by Labour members of Parliament. And you have to question what their stance is when they have repeatedly said that they want to protect jobs and employment, that they themselves want to negotiate a customs union. And it has shown, tonight has shown, that the Labour Party is split.
And let me also ask you about the really big development that we'll be going into more detail about in a moment, which is the reference by the Electoral Commission of Vote Leave to the police and the finding that they broke the law. Your colleagues, like Nicola Soames, are now saying, scrap the whole thing, run the referendum again. Are you coming round to that thought, that we just need to scrap it and start again?
Well, I certainly am coming round to the thought that people voted last time not knowing what the potential deal was. I'm not sure running the referendum again would help, but I am starting to come round to the idea that a referendum on the actual deal would be a good idea. After all, we were told that it's the people's will, and I think particularly with the allegations of cheating, the fact that there were findings that Vote Leave had breached electoral law, so much so that the file has been handed over to the police. I think certainly my constituents wanted to know that the process was fair and that they weren't, that there wasn't foul play in the way that the campaigns were run. And I think it will cause a lot of my constituents unease to hear about those findings today.
Antoinette Sandbach, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, with me here on the green is a Conservative MP from the other side, Desmond Swade. Now, confusingly, you voted with the government tonight.
I did.
But you are a Brexiteer.
I am.
This whole thing's a shambles, isn't it? Total mess.
No, the government is endeavouring to honour the referendum result. The government is a Brexiteer government, and I'm a government supporter.
Yes, but you're threatening to defeat your own government.
Oh no, I'm not a member.
1 minute you're threatening to defeat them, 1 minute you're threatening with them.
I haven't.
The whole thing's a mess.
Comrade, I haven't threatened anyone.
Are you saying you will? Are you saying you will definitely support Theresa May's Chequers?
I think anyone who supports Brexit has to be very careful about joining some sort of suicide squad and saying this wasn't the Brexit.
Who's committing suicide? Theresa May?
No, what I'm saying is those people who might want to pull the entire temple and edifice down on their heads because it isn't the particular flavour of Brexit that they particularly wanted. Now, I'm a member of the ERG and I have a great deal of time for Rees-Mogg, but I think we've all got to
So you're in the suicide squad, you just don't agree with the man who's leading it?
No, I'm saying I didn't join a suicide squad.
Right.
Well,
you did apparently.
I'm saying that we
Are you going to leave it?
On the contrary, what Jacob Rees-Mogg achieved yesterday was his desired end. Now, the important thing is we have not, as you clearly indicated earlier, there is, in my estimate, no majority in Parliament for any particular flavour of Brexit.
That's a disaster.
My concern...
And a farce, 2 years after the vote.
Well, blame the voters because they elected the Parliament. The reality is this. We have to work through that and find a way of honouring the decision that the voters made without, as I say, joining some sort of suicide squad
stupid
that wrecks the whole
voters for electing
thing.
Stupid MPs. That's what you seem to be saying tonight.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the people voted in the way that they voted and they got the Parliament that they voted for.
Yes.
And we have to deliver...
Them.
Well, that you're saying that. I wouldn't possibly say that.
Well, you just kind of said it. I mean, look, the country wants some leadership. And what we appear to be heading towards right now, because you say there is no consensus around any particular Brexit, is no deal. That's the reality, isn't it? Don't you now have to start laying out to people what no deal really means? For jobs, for economic growth, for everything.
There is a clear difference of opinion as to what no deal means. But the reality is the Prime Minister is giving leadership to try and find a deal. And I'm saying that like-minded colleagues, whatever their own particular preference with respect to Brexit, need to clearly think what is the best possibility of honouring the decision that the people made. And that, I'm afraid, is something with the Prime Minister at the moment.
Today we also know that Vote Leave broke the law. The campaign was illegal. Is it illegitimate? Should we start again, as your esteemed colleague Nicholas Soames suggested today?
The law must take its course. Those people who break the law must face up to their punishment.
Yes,
but I don't believe for one moment it invalidates the result. The reality is this. The Remain campaigns, plural, and I include the government campaign, which was a Remain campaign, outspent Leave campaigns
but they didn't break the law, as far as we know yet.
Outspent them by a factor of 2 to 1. That's
Vote Leave cheated. That's the point.
And the price of cheating will be the punishment, the law. But the reality is that it didn't, in my estimate, make much difference to the outcome.
Desmond Swade, thank you very much indeed.
Prime Minister remains the Prime Minister. The government survives. The Chequers Brexit policy lives, but it's not been a normal day in Westminster. Today, the government prevailed over Tory Remainer rebels and their plan to keep Britain in an EU customs union, but it needed Labour votes to do it. So, in effect, Labour Leaver rebels unwound the power of Tory Remainer ones. But in addition, there were some desperate measures. The government whips had to threaten their own MPs with a confidence vote or even a general election to get their way. and one Tory MP who was not meant to vote, being paired with a Lib Dem MP on maternity leave, did vote, which is considered very naughty. So, big news we've got here, but what next? The ball now goes into the EU court, and when Michel Barnier says the Chequers plans need changing, then how does the government react? Well, had the government lost the customs union vote tonight, we would have been in uncharted territory. But as the government won the day, we now await the entry to uncharted territory at some future time. Our political editor Nick Bott looks at the day's development.
The journey to Brexit is paved with surprises, boulders, and an array of painful choices. Tonight, Theresa May won a breathing space of sorts when she fought off a pro-European challenge that would have blown apart her Brexit plan.
The ayes to the right, 301. The noes to the left, 307.
It was an uncomfortably tight margin of victory, secured with the help of Labour leavers. But that was enough to preserve a key number 10 red line. The UK will join neither a or the customs union with the EU. Brexit is no easy journey. A few minutes earlier, pro-Europeans had defeated the government to ensure the UK remains part of the European medicines regulatory arrangements.
The ayes to the right, 305. The noes to the left, 301.
Theresa May will be mightily relieved that her Brexit fundamentals remain in place. One of her closest cabinet colleagues told me the Prime Minister now commands Parliament. It's over to Brussels to respond. But back home, the atmosphere in her party is souring. Brexiteers are in the ascendant and Remainers are downbeat. One vote today.
One pro-European was putting on a brave face, insisting her group still has influence.
What this has shown is that the referendum clearly was never going to be the thing that lanced the boil once and for all, either in Parliament, within the Conservative Party, or in the country as a whole. And for us to think that it would be dealt with quickly on that day was perhaps naive. That boil is still alive and well. Yesterday and today was starting to lance it, but you know, at the end of the day, there's a long way to go on this still. We don't yet know what the deal will look like. There is a meaningful vote secured in Parliament that we worked hard to achieve in December last year, and when it comes to it, that will, you know, however, what that deal looks like at the time, that will determine how we vote.
A leading Leaver welcomed the vote, but warned the Prime Minister not to give any more ground to Brussels.
Well, I would hope the government would recognise that there are limits now to where they can go. They need to tell the European Union whatever else one thinks, and I don't particularly like this white paper, but notwithstanding that this is it. This is on the table, but there is nowhere that we can go. That the idea that we can suddenly give way on some of our core red line issues has to be told to the EU straight away. That's not going to happen. So now they need to make the decision, the EU, whether or not they accept it.
The Brexit showdown will move to Brussels in the autumn. Any blurring of the red lines will raise support amongst Brexiteers for a no-deal exit, presenting a mammoth challenge, according to one government source. Ensure the inevitable recession does not turn into a depression.
Well, Nick is here. Nick, I mean, they got their way, the government, but some drastic measures to get their way.
That's right, the whips did their job. When it's a perilous vote, they turn the screws on the rebels. And I understand that the Chief Whip, Julian Smith, told a number of these rebel MPs, if you win tonight, I will table a confidence motion in the government tomorrow, because this goes to the heart. It's fundamental to the government's well-being. That will lead to a general election, and that will lead to Jeremy Corbyn in Downing Street, and it will all be your fault. He also said that he would pull the third reading, that's the yes or no vote, on the actual whole bill, so they would end up destroying the bill. Interestingly, I talked to a senior Brexiteer who said that had the Prime Minister lost, there would have been another 10 letters that would have gone into the chairman of the 1922 committee that would then have got them to the magic 48 figures for an actual confidence vote in her leadership of the Conservative Party. So it was really high stakes for Theresa May. Looks like her premiership was hanging in the balance, but as you were saying earlier, saved by 4 Labour MPs.
Yeah. Poisonous atmosphere in the Commons at the moment. I mean, it was interesting, Nick Soames tweeted yesterday, "Not in 35 years have I known such a truly unpleasant and deeply uncertain time in the House."
That's right, and Brandon Lewis, who's the chairman of the Conservative Party, has had to apologise to Jo Swinson, the deputy leader of the Liberal Democrats, after he broke that pairing arrangement because she's away on maternity leave. He says it was a mistake by the whips. But it's not just the Conservative Party where there is this very, very difficult atmosphere. Huffington Post reported this evening that Margaret Hodge, the veteran Labour MP, confronted Jeremy Corbyn behind the Speaker's chair after that vote and said, I've spoken to friends of Margaret Hodge, they confirm this, and she said to Jeremy Corbyn, "You are an anti-Semitic racist." And then she said to him, "You are wanting to make it impossible for people like me, Jewish people like me, to remain in the Labour Party." Friends of Margaret Hodge say she did not swear in this encounter.
There were some reports that
she did not swear. But the reason why she confronted him is that the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party have decided to water down the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism. What has been decided is that this issue should go to a review, it should be looked at again, and it was that issue that Margaret Hodge was confronting Jeremy Corbyn on.
Maybe the sun is getting to everybody. It's been a chaotic period for Parliament, with some wondering what the last couple of days have told us about the government's ability to get a sign-off for its final deal. We'll hear later from the leader of the House, Andrea Leadsom. In the meantime, one of the lessons of the last couple of days is how thin the line can be between government loyalists and rebel. When policies can shift within the space of a few hours, MPs considered friends of the whips can quickly find themselves foes. And we're joined now by two nailed-on Tory rebels from different ends of the party. Marcus Fish is the MP for Yeovil and wants to leave the single market and customs union. And the amendment he put his name to was controversially accepted by the government yesterday. Dominic Grieve voted against the government today and wants as close a relationship to the EU as possible, and that includes being within a customs union. Good evening to you both. Marcus Fish, let me start with you. Is the Chequers proposal, the plan, is that alive at the moment in your view?
Well, look, it has been an excitable week, but I think we achieved some very important things this week. It was very important to get this legislation through. This is fundamental sort of no-deal preparation legislation. It will enable us to essentially set the frameworks for our trade.
Is the Chequers deal alive? That is government policy as I understand it. Is that what you understand government policy to be?
Well, I don't know what their current thoughts are because I'm not a member of the government. But
you're a member of the government party. You voted today with the government and you don't know what the policy is.
I don't agree with the Chequers policy. No, I don't. Because
but you know it's the policy and you're willing to support it?
No, I'm not willing to support that policy. I'm not willing to support the Chequers deal.
So for you, Chequers is dead, and that's why you voted for the government?
I think it's the wrong thing for the country to pursue that particular
why did you
negotiating
vote for the government then?
path.
It's their policy.
Because this was about the enacting legislation to enable us to be able to make all the preparations that we need to be able to have a smooth exit from the EU.
For no deal?
Well,
basically,
for a world trade terms deal and lots of other side legislation that can enable a smooth exit. I am not a no-deal person. I want to see a deal. I want to see a comprehensive free trade agreement.
But you haven't got an answer
like
for
was
the
in
Northern
our
Irish
manifesto.
backstop. You don't have an answer for Northern Ireland.
What was not in our manifesto was a customs union and single market.
Well, I'm sure
and
the EU
the people of Britain don't want us to do that.
But you don't have a solution to Northern Ireland that the EU will find acceptable. So
I think I do, and I've been working with the government to try to put that on the table. They've not listened, and that's one of the reasons why they're in the mess that they are.
And it doesn't matter what you think, it matters what they think if we're going to get a deal. So we're heading to no deal under your plan, aren't we?
Well, I do think that this particular negotiating strategy won't pass the first test of engagement with the EU, because I think the EU will just say that isn't good enough, we want more. I think it's unrealistic of us to expect them to sort of change the way that they do things just for us, and I think it would be much better to have a normal relationship between two different regulatory and customs jurisdictions, and that's just fine.
If Mrs May continues to believe in government policy and the policy she said she was promoting by the votes today and by the votes yesterday, what do you do?
Well, as I've said, I'm very keen for the government to change that policy,
and you'll change
and to, well, that's that I'm not going to get drawn into. It's about policy, and it's about a plan for the people of Britain, for the country, for our businesses. And if we all put our sort of shoulders to the wheel and get behind it, this is absolutely doable. And I really think we need to come together now and get behind a proper negotiating
Dominic
position.
Grieve, if nothing happens between now and March the 29th, we fall out of the EU with no deal, correct?
If nothing happens, but that won't be the case.
Now, how is that not the case? Because if there is no deal, I don't see how you get a vote on no deal. You get a vote on a deal. It's not even, some people don't even think it's a meaningful vote.
I'm quite sure in my own mind that if we got to the point where it was clear there was no deal, there would be a major political crisis. And I think that in those circumstances, Parliament would assert its authority. That might mean the breakup of the current party system. And I think that's something I have to live with, although it's not something I would wish to see happen. But as I've said on many occasions, there is no possibility that I, as a Member of Parliament, would accept going along with a line which said that we had to accept no deal and drop off the cliff, because the consequences economically and for our national security would be so serious.
This is really important. So what I don't understand is what form, I mean, a lot of people think there's a huge majority against no deal in the House of Commons. What form can that rebellion take? I mean, is it essentially a lot of Conservatives crossing the House, joining the opposition? I don't see how it works.
The difficulty we've got at the moment is that for understandable reasons of loyalty, and also actually, and it applies on both sides of the House, people wanting to try and find a way through this, I think that there were many in political parties who won't put their heads above the parapet. Right. But the evidence suggests to me that if it comes to the crunch, there will be a substantial majority in Parliament seeking to do something to prevent a no-deal Brexit taking place.
What can they actually do? I mean, I hear that you basically say no deal is more important to you than remaining loyal to the Tories.
It will be a major political crisis, right? And it will either lead to
confidence motion.
Well, either the government will have to change its position, or the government might fall. That could precipitate a general election.
Or that could precipitate the Queen going to someone else to form a caretaker government.
Or it could be a caretaker or national government being formed, and it might lead, as Justine Greening has suggested, to having to go back and consult the public about what they really want. Because I'm the first to accept, if we have paralysis, that at the end of the day, we can't disregard the public's vote in the referendum 2 years ago. So these are really complicated matters, and I'm the first to accept this is a terrible hole into which our country has got itself.
A lot of people are reading Nicholas Shakespeare's book, 6 Minutes in May. It's about the fall of Chamberlain's government after the Norway crisis at the beginning of the Second World War. Have you been looking at that recently? That brought down an unpopular government and formed a national government.
I haven't read that one, but I'm a historian by education. This is what I read at university. I'm familiar with national crises, and there's no doubt that we are in the biggest peacetime crisis in our modern history. So this is a very unusual state of affairs, and we have got to try, as members of Parliament, to exercise our best judgment to find a way through that. And that is what we try to do.
Can I get a final comment on that from you, Marcus Fish? Because he's right. The numbers are on his side in the Commons. There is no majority in the Commons for no deal.
Well, look, as I said, I don't want no deal.
Right, but
I think it's about, well, no, I don't think it needs to be like that at all. I've been speaking to
the
Germans here in London, for example.
If it comes to that.
And they've been saying, why haven't you put a text on the table for a free trade agreement? They're perfectly happy to speak about that, and that's an excellent outcome. A Canada plus with lots of side agreements, lots of work that the government can do to help business get ready for a new system, that's entirely doable, and I really think we need to show some spine and just get on with it.
Thank you both very much. Thank you indeed.